In a few moments, the French colors of Pamir will be lowered for the last time.
After 13 years of operations fighting terrorism and establishing security as part of the international coalition, French troops have left Afghanistan. Afghan forces are now responsible for the security of their country. During those 13 years, nearly 70,000 French soldiers were deployed to the Heracles, Pamir, Heracles, and Epidote operations. They fought there. Each of them has left a part of their soul in the mountains of Afghanistan. 700 were injured, 89 lost their lives there in the name of their commitment. In this new issue of the Journal of Defense, we will transport you to Afghanistan to relive the key moments of the French involvement. At the start of the new millennium, the West was hit hard by obscurantism. The September 11 attacks left more than 3,000 dead and 6,000 injured on American soil. Following the fatal attacks, the United States committed itself to fight against Osama bin Laden, then head of the terrorist organization Al-Qaeda. The target, the Taliban regime in Afghanistan, bin Laden's country of residence. France would be one of the first countries to support the United States, its historic ally.
Les trois quarts du pays étaient contrôlés par les talibans.
3/4 of the country was under the Taliban. Social and human conditions were in full regression across the whole country. As we know, and as was quickly confirmed, the famous training camps for the terrorists who served bin Laden were also in the country. So frankly, it was intolerable. Like people today who tell you not to go and fight Daesh in Iraq because ultimately they will do what they want in their own corner, it's not our problem. That's unacceptable. There is a direct and close connection between what is happening in France and what is happening in these regions.
In October 2001, airstrikes hit Afghanistan. The aircraft carrier Charles de Gaulle joined 9 other nations in the Indian Ocean. A carrier strike group was formed with a multi-phased mission. Captain Eric, then head of operations of a fleet of super-étendards, remembers a testing first tour.
My first tour, 2001-2002, was the most significant because it was longer, and it was the first time that we were deployed for such a long time so far away, as we did 70 days uninterrupted at sea in a total deployment of 7 months. The missions assigned to the air group were of 3 different types. Some were performed by Hawkeyes. These were missions for the organization of aircraft activity in the airspace over Afghanistan, but also over Pakistan. There were 2 types of missions carried out by the fighters: air reconnaissance and later support missions for ground troops, which may or may not have involved air-to-ground attacks.
The pilots faced difficulties they had never encountered before.
Flight times, due to their elongation and the distance at which it was necessary to act. It is true that this was something we had very rarely practiced. Coordination with the supply planes was more complicated with the coalition. Apart from that, we were well prepared.
After the bombings and the missions carried out by the Allied Special Forces, the Taliban regime fell. Within the international coalition, 2 parallel operations began on Afghan soil: the U.S. Operation Enduring Freedom and the International Security Assistance Force, or ISAF. France deployed its ground troops around Kabul, the capital. In spring 2002, the 7th Mountain Infantry Battalion relieved the men of the 21st Marine Infantry Battalion.
We had patrols. One day a patrol, next day we would be involved in a civilian-military cooperation mission, for example. And overall, we were involved in the airport's defense.
The soldiers were greeted with enthusiasm by the people of Kabul who had been liberated from the Taliban.
They felt that a new phase could be starting for them. The oppression was gone. They were very demanding. Our company commander, after 2 months on site, decided to build a school for boys and girls. So during the remaining few months, we had 2 months or so to build a turnkey school for a village, starting from scratch.
In 2003, NATO took command of ISAF. One of its goals was to help the Afghan government to ensure the country's security. France armed Operation Epidote under US command.
Him.
The detachment's mission was to train Afghan officers.
Legs apart.
To date, more than 21,000 men have been trained by Epidote.
Welcome to ISAF's headquarters.
Internationally, although France is not a member of the NATO Military Command, General Jean-Louis P., commander of the European Corps, has headed ISAF since 2004.
Under the command of General P.
He was the only Frenchman to command this international force, numbering about 10,000 soldiers. More than 700 French troops were deployed there. That same year, Afghanistan's first free presidential elections were organized in a challenging security environment. ISAF supervised the elections. No incidents were reported.
This was the heart of our mission, an area control mission of the urban area in Greater Kabul, in a security environment that was clearly degraded, but that was not at all like the situation that I had experienced in Kapisa. I particularly remember the week of the elections during which we were deployed and our whole area of responsibility in Kabul. We occupied the polling stations in advance. We secured them, and we stayed in a police station that was also a polling station with Afghan police. For a week, we explored every possibility and patrolled the whole area. We even escorted the urns containing the ballots cast by the people into Kabul. It felt really tense.
Hamid Karzai was elected president of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan. 2004 marked a turning point in the operations in Afghanistan. Many attacks regularly targeted NATO forces. 4 years after their arrival in Afghanistan, French soldiers were now engaged in war operations.
From 2003 to 2006, the Special Air, Land, and Sea Forces worked together on a very complicated mission that actually involved controlling the border in the most dangerous area. First, our special forces, and then our forces in the Kabul region, faced increasingly dangerous situations with attacks, sometimes in several waves, in the city of Kabul, which we narrowly escaped, although other forces were not so lucky. And then there was a change in the entire NATO deployment.
After Kabul and its province, NATO missions extended throughout Afghanistan from 2006. France strengthened its operations and deployed a helicopter battalion. 30,000 soldiers from 37 nations were operating across all provinces in the country. Under the new operational plan, 5 geographic areas, called regions, were created by NATO. Command rotated between the Allied forces. General Pierre de Villiers, now Joint Chief Chairman, took first command of the capital region, the area covering Kabul and its province. Most of the French ground forces were deployed there. France continued its commitment to the independence of Afghanistan. While French police trained the Afghan police, OMLTs were deployed to the ANNA, the Afghan National Army. Captain Jean-Baptiste revisits his experience as leader of an OMLT team.
The missions were firstly to participate in training Afghan companies called Kandaks, to instruct them, complete their training, their education, advise them, explain to them what support they could access from the French forces deployed in the region, and then accompany them in combat actions, operations, whether purely Afghan initiative or undertaken jointly with French forces.
For 8 years, France armed 6 of the 36 OMLTs. Throughout the operations, ISAF and the French forces adapted their procedure. In 2007, fighters based in Dushanbe, in neighboring Tajikistan, joined the U.S. base in Kandahar, the former Taliban stronghold. At the heart of the combat zones, French pilots operated over the whole of Afghanistan on behalf of the Allied and Afghan forces. In August 2008, France was reminded of the harsh reality of soldiering by the Uzbek ambush. At the same time, in Paris, Parliament voted for the extension of the French involvement in Afghanistan. The French forces was increased to 3,400 men and women.
Today's parade is to officially create Task Force Lafayette.
In winter 2009, ISAF reorganized its forces once again. A French brigade under U.S. command, the Lafayette Task Force, was to be created.
And so, French, American, and Afghan soldiers will stand shoulder to shoulder in unity of purpose.
This brigade was to be called the Shield of Kabul, as we shall see in the second part of the Journal of Defense Special on 13 years of French operations in Afghanistan.